Welcome to the Building Web3 Podcast. Today I have my good friend Rowan. He is the CEO of Sapien. Real quick before we get into Sapien, give us a brief background into yourself. How did you get into this Web3/AI world?
Oh man, well, great to be here first and foremost. Thank you for having me. Uh, Bit of a strange story. Originally a mech engineer, so I spent my career, at least my early career, I say early career, a decade, unfortunately, time I will never get back, working in the energy industry, and progressed from kind of engineer up to exec level. Ultimately, hated it, and a friend of mine told me about these magical internet beams that I could point my gaming PC towards and earn a couple of bucks. And so I did that. And then I got completely addicted. And over the course of kind of 2013 through to 2016, Ethereum obviously became a thing. It became significantly more profitable to be faffing around in my house with a bunch of different graphics cards than it was to do a real job, quote unquote. And so I used it as my escape path. I bailed, I set up a couple of warehouses, I started mining full time, quite quickly got bored, and uh, from there just got completely and utterly lost down the rabbit hole, building a variety of different things from protocols to DEX aggregation to DeFi stuff, charting tools, venture capital work, and now a giant network of AI trainers.
Now, for people that are unfamiliar, and we've done many AI episodes because I also run a Zero Gravities podcast, so we're very AI pilled on this site. But let's imagine somebody's like, "What the heck is an AI trainer?" Talk to us a little bit about like what's an AI trainer and why do we need them?
For sure. So I think really simple analogy. Think of AI as an adolescent that we need to teach, and the way you teach is with data. And so right now, the latest models are all massively hungry for net new data, and so there's kind of a couple of different ways that you can go about satiating this need for data. Obviously, early models just combed the internet, absorbed everything they could possibly absorb, and got to kind of a level of sophistication and reasoning as an output. But now that ship has sailed. We then kind of went into a land of data labeling and data structuring. And that's where people are paid around the world, typically in a centralized fashion, most often in the developing world, places like the Philippines, Bangladesh, East Africa. And they're paid to do things, at least back then, like draw a bounding box around the AirPods to kind of help these models understand the world around it so they have more nuanced understanding of things. Now, fast forward to today, machine learning and computer vision can obviously do this stuff. Like, we don't need to draw a box around this anymore. What we do need, though, is we need nuanced human expertise in almost every facet of life. In fact, absolutely every facet of life. And we need these people to lean in and actively teach, actively provide data so that these AI models can absorb and become more sophisticated, become more intelligent, get towards human level reasoning, and ultimately just be significantly more useful for everybody that uses them. And so what we're doing is we're kind of flipping the open model or flipping the closed model, should I say, on its head and building an open protocol for AI training data. And that protocol allows anyone anywhere to lean in and provide their expertise, their nuanced understanding of the world, and be incentivized to do so.
And to make this a bit more concrete, let's talk a little bit about like what kind of training data are we looking for? Is this like, hey, we're looking for like a bunch of radiologists to identify tumors, or like talk to us a little bit, to kind of visualize this for the audience.
And that's kind of what makes this so fun. It isn't anything specific. It's literally everything. Like these models are pretty sophisticated at this point. I think everybody is of the opinion that we are either at AGI or very, very close. All of the traditional metrics to try and figure out when we have this level of intelligence, like the boxes are being ticked very, very quickly. But if you are, say, a doctor is a great example, and you ask it a question related to symptoms that you're seeing either in yourself or in a patient, you're probably going to get like a pretty good answer. There's obviously a lot of safety protocols that are in there that will tone down some of these answers, but you're very likely to read it and kind of think, it's not quite right. And the same goes for almost any really deep expert area of knowledge. So it could be a venture capital person. It could be a media personality. It could be a lawyer. It could be a mathematician. Like there's lots of different areas in which these models need significantly more advanced expert knowledge in order to get to the next level. And so a couple of examples of recent times, things that we're proud of, things that we think have been pretty cool to be a part of. One of them was oncologists, specifically radiology experts, drawing boxes around pancreatic cancer cells so that they can help train a model to detect cancer significantly earlier just by looking at human scans. And so we had to go out and find these people. And in the early stages, when you're bootstrapping a network, it's pretty hard. Like you have to literally just be boots on the ground and go out and hunt down the experts that you're looking for. But the thesis here is really simple. If we build a giant network of AI trainers, and we make sure these people are properly incentivized to lean in and either structure or label existing data, one big chunk of our business, or provide net new data, the other chunk, then these problems start to disappear. Because once you have the network effect, you can kind of lean into that network and find the right expertise for any particular requirement.
Yeah, and I guess this brings up a point. So let's take the oncology example. If we need a bunch of like radiologists, or guys, I'm not that familiar with medical terms. If we need a bunch of these like high paid professionals, it may be difficult to get them to play some kind of trainer game. So how do you guys kind of work around these kinds of things? Because like in the past, if we're working with the Philippines or Bangladesh, like we can get trainers for quite cheaply, but for these data sets, is it just the data set is a lot higher cost, or like how do you actually get people to contribute?
No, you nailed it. There's a massive variety of costs depending on the type of data that you're sourcing. And so if you put yourself in the shoes of someone building a model, and there's an interesting kind of quirk here that we can talk about a little bit. I think today's customers are going to be very different to tomorrow's customers, but we can go into that later. It's obviously going to depend. So, like if you're looking for simple computer vision, perhaps you're building autonomous vehicles and you want the vehicle to better recognize where the curbs are, better recognize a stop sign, a red light, an amber light, a green light, these sort of simple things that essentially anybody can do. Obviously, your cost basis for this work is going to be significantly lower versus building a complex mathematical model that needs really, really sophisticated math knowledge, and therefore only a small number of people can really support to help kind of teach it to teach us. And so obviously your cost base is going to be much, much higher. Um, and we've seen kind of the full range. We have a bunch of requirements for relatively simple work in our front end today, which is game.sapien.io. We have like a vehicle positioning task. And so you're clicking in and it's literally showing you a vehicle and you're telling it from what angle it's viewing that car. So it can better understand if a car is like side on coming towards it. And so that model will then have a greater understanding of what's happening around. Clearly, everybody can say that's the back of a car, that's the side of a car, but it's super valuable to have a massive trove of this information to be structured and labeled correctly so they can then feed it in afterwards.
So now we've got and then as an example, so we have this like different kind of vantage point of people are identifying the different vantage point. Do you have to build like almost bespoke games for each, like, let's say data set that you're trying to build?
No, yes and no. We kind of view this as modulars, our modules. And so our system today is clearly in kind of early alpha. We're just about to move into a beta project. And our system is one product, but it's kind of in two halves. And so the way we work today is the majority of the 17 enterprise paying customers that we've gathered to date. These are like Alibaba, Baidu, Midjourney, Amazon Zoox. We can go into detail on them separately, but they're all in kind of like an invite only kind of subset of our product. And so when you log into gamesapien.io, you're going to see a very small selection of tasks that are from customers that are willing to have these tasks out in the open, rather than seeing everything. And an example here, some of these customers may not want all of their data to be public. It might be proprietary data, or there might be an element of like competitive nature here, whereby they don't want everybody around them to see, oh, they're training a model with this particular thing, and that obviously loses competitive advantage. And so we're currently building in this kind of system of two halves. The gamified elements are really designed for the open side. We want to get to a point where providing data is not just worth it from a monetary perspective, but actually something that's kind of fun to do. The way we're doing this is not by creating like a really sophisticated game that's clearly almost at odds with providing high quality data. We're more just taking like lessons in gamification, and kind of grinder mechanics. If anyone's ever played a bunch of stuff where you're just like, I need to get to the next level because it's going to unlock X, Y, and Z. We want to take those types of things, simple things like streaks, badges, reputation, and layer them in to enable people to kind of have a bit more fun while they're actually doing this. On the other side, it's much more akin to a traditional tasking platform. It's typically people that are doing this either professionally or to supplement their income. They're less interested in gamification. They're more interested in kind of monetizing either their expertise or their time.
So let's walk through, I guess we'll call it like the customer journey. So let's say I'm gonna be called Jaxi Baba, and I'm gonna be a new competitor to Alibaba. And I'm coming in. What do I create a specific task, and then I upload a data set, and I'm like, hey, Sapien, what I really need is that people are doing this kind of labeling, and then you guys create a game based on that.
No, we handle essentially everything, and so all of the gamification elements in the future state will be available for everything, and you can just toggle them on or off. And so if you're kind of doing this for fun, you're doing this on the side, maybe you're faffing around in on-chain world like we are, then maybe gamification elements are great. Maybe it makes the experience better. If it's professional and you want to get through as much data as quickly as you can at the highest possible quality, perhaps these distractions are not what you want. And so users can toggle them on or off. But customer journey is pretty simple. They rock up with a data set, or they rock up with a requirement for a data set, and they either upload or explain what they need. And then we convert that into something that can be put into the front end. And so where we are today, where we have this kind of system of two halves, this is like a step on a journey to a completely open protocol. And the end state that we're aiming for, there's a few pretty key missing components that we're currently building, is that all data sets or all requirements for data sets will be available in the front end. We will have a large network of users. Today, we have about 150,000 people in the network, and each of these people will build up reputation over time. The higher the reputation they have in the system, then the more tasks that are available to them, essentially. We know that we can trust them. They're going to get extra rewards. There's a staking mechanism that we can talk about in a second to help ensure quality. But ultimately, the aim is to have all of the tasks available in the front end with high reputation requirements and then kind of qualification screening requirements for certain tasks. And so we could have a task which is like somewhat obscured in terms of where it came from. It might just display spatial annotation. The user will click on it. They'll probably have to sign into an NDA, depending on who the customer is and what the requirements are. They'll need to prove that they have the right expertise or the ability to provide the data that's required. They'll obviously will have needed the level of reputation to see it in the first place. And then once they meet these screening criteria, they're in. And so rather than us kind of manually cherry picking people from the 150,000 community to say, these 20 people are great, they're doing awesome work, let's invite them to some of this paid work over here where they're onboarded to specific customer data sets, we can just have people level up through the system and then ultimately go into whatever task best interests them or whatever expertise fits their kind of their skill set.
Interesting. So talk to us a little bit, because you mentioned staking, and this is the Building Web3 podcast, so everyone's a little like, what's the crypto element of this? So talk to us a little bit about like how are you guys using on chain? How are you guys using like Web3 mechanisms?
Okay, there's kind of two big reasons here. The first one, we're building a giant network of people, and we're already in 110 countries, which for me is batshit mental. Excuse the French. That's very, very difficult to manage from a traditional fiat standing point. And so stablecoins become just an obvious solution. The second part here, and the reason that we are creating a token, and we'll have a token in the relatively near term, is that moving from a centralized model whereby you have 1,000 people in a warehouse somewhere in the Philippines or somewhere in Bangladesh, and you have managers who can watch these people to ensure they're providing really strong, high quality data. Flip that on its head and let anybody anywhere participate from their phone, on the bus, in between Uber trips, in the classroom. You don't have the same ability to ensure quality. And so the reason that we're creating a token is specifically to ensure that incentives are properly aligned between people doing the work, the enterprises, and the network itself, so that we can have all of the users have some level of skin in the game, essentially betting against their future work. If they do good work, then they get rewarded more. They're high value to us. They're high value to the customers. If they do bad work, or if they cheat, or if they use, I don't know, some sort of bot, whatever the case may be, then they are slashed. And so we're essentially taking the proof of stake type mechanism that we're all very familiar with. We're cutting out the consensus. We're using our own QA/QC system for consensus. And we're just deploying the main economic incentives and disincentives to ensure good behavior. And that is the way that we managed to go from relatively meh quality, being very, very open and honest when we started kind of decentralizing, to actually being able to compete with the quality, if not beat the quality that's seen and kind of expected from a centralized model. And so just to kind of recap, because I'm rambling a little bit, I am a little bit unwell, so I apologize. We need crypto rails to enable payouts to users in every country in the world, essentially, every country that doesn't suffer from sanctions and things like this. And we need a way of incentivizing and disincentivizing users to deliver super high quality data. And crypto is the answer to both of these things.
Yeah, I have to say I'm always very excited about these use cases because like we talk with a lot of talk with a lot of crypto companies, and sometimes it's like, oh, we've got this derivative on top of this derivative that you can then restake into another derivative, and you're just like, is that really that important? But like here, like we actually have like real customers, we actually have like real and it makes sense to have this kind of like decentralized rewards mechanism. So talk to us a little bit about like some of the current users you guys have of these data sets. You mentioned like in Alibaba, like these are like big tech giants. So talk to us a little bit about like some of the partnerships you guys have already cemented.
I have to be a little bit careful here, to be completely
Sure,
honest.
sure. Yeah.
The vast majority of our customers don't really want us to be talking in detail about exactly what they're asking for, either in net new data or in structuring of their existing data. So let me just speak kind of broadly. Um, First up, we're super proud to be doing business with some of the largest companies in the world, especially at our stage. We're a relatively small team of around 40 people. We've only been around for a little over a year. And so that in itself is epic. The types of work are super varied. There's everything from kind of very sophisticated translation of really obscure languages, which is obviously something that you can imagine a giant network of kind of people around the world to be good at, all the way through to spatial annotation. And spatial annotation, if people aren't familiar, this is kind of 3D labeling type work from the data that's created by autonomous vehicles. And so a great example here, which is absolutely nothing to do with us, to be completely clear, is Tesla. They've been driving around the world for a very long time, and they're constantly recording. They're constantly creating net new data, and they're experiencing new things that they don't quite know how to handle. And so that data is constantly streamed back to HQ, and it's then parsed out to a variety of different ways. A bunch of it is kind of automatically checked with different AI models. A bunch of it is sent to humans to kind of say, what's going on here? How should we react? What would be the correct course of action? And that's the kind of spatial annotation work that we're talking about here. We are not working with Tesla, like Elon Musk. If you're listening, yes, please. But that ship is not here today. But that type of work is certainly something that's common. And you can imagine the volumes of data that are created by autonomous vehicles. It's something that becomes bread and butter within the network. One cool thing here, which is a kind of bit of a weird coincidence that we weren't like mindfully aware of when we kind of started creating gamification. For us, gamification was a way of making something that traditionally has been very boring slightly less likely to make you want to just either stop or do something much worse. Let's not go down that path. And so gamification was kind of by design to make this fun. But the weird coincidence is that when you're doing screening for autonomous vehicle data labeling, the cohort of people that seem to just massively outperform every other cohort is gamers. And you can kind of think it makes sense, like when you think about it. Gamers, myself included, we're used to running around in a world, a 3D world. We're used to quite complex controls. We're used to doing things quite quickly and having fast reaction times. And so spatial annotation, autonomous vehicle data becomes like a perfect skill set for a cohort that we already have, which is awesome.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. And I know you guys have some milestones coming up. So can you tell us a little bit about like kind of what you guys have in the pipeline for the next like month or 2 months?
Um, Big things for us. We are building kind of like V0 essentially right now of the four main components that build up this system. Those components are bolstered initially by a token, which I've mentioned already. And so this is actually the first time we're openly talking that there will be a Sapien token. And so we're in the midst of auditing smart contracts, staking requirements, all of these types of things right now, so that we are prepped and ready for token to kind of roll out in the near future. I'm not going to say a date because I'm not going to hold myself to it. It'll come out when we're ready and when it's ready. Um, but four main systems here. We need to build a reputation system that's really open and useful, and not just kind of useful for us, but something that people can take with them on chain and kind of build in lots of different places. I think reputation within the system is clearly the most important thing for us, but it's actually useful to understand how people generally behave, i.e., if someone is a scammer over in this system, there's a high risk they're going to be trying to take advantage of this system. And so reputation model is the first kind of V0 system that we're building. The second piece here, that's going to kind of feed directly into qualification. And I'm using qualification a little bit loosely, but ultimately qualifying a user for a particular task. And that system, again, we're building the V0 as we speak. And then the kind of third big part here that I think is super important, just briefly to talk about, is in a world where we build a giant network of AI trainers, a giant network of people, of sapiens, and we have a large pipeline of enterprise work, either directly from enterprises or future state from AI models that are hunting for their own data, AI agents that are looking for data, or other data providers that need access to a network of people. We're going to need to come up with a methodology to match a particular task, either the creation of new data or the structuring and labeling of existing data, with a user, an expert, or somebody with enough reputation or enough experience in that kind of realm. And so the third kind of component here is a matching system, turning Sapien into somewhat of a brain in between this kind of open marketplace of supply and demand. The piece that I didn't talk about that we've already built, but we need to evolve over time, is probably the single most important part. And that's the kind of QA QC process. Ultimately, data is completely useless and worthless if it's not right. And so there needs to be a very sophisticated way of determining that the data provided by users is actually correct. We do this in a couple of different ways, but ultimately the long-term vision here is that we build a system where the most reputable members of the community are able to earn extra incentives for QA/QCing the least reputable members of the community. We have kind of concentric circles of trust, and we have core groups of people that we know deliver really good data. We can layer in machine learning and some AI models and things like that, which we've already kind of started through. But ultimately, the bigger picture is we're going to need the most experienced to QA/QC the least experienced in order for this to be remotely scalable. And so that QA/QC system is the fourth pillar, but not something for the next couple of months. That's something that's already well underway and evolving as we speak.
Yeah, you guys have some very exciting milestones coming up. Now, I want to talk about AI industry in general because crypto has had such a really the popularity of AI has taken off. What do you think about the AI use cases that currently exist? Do you feel like agents will be everywhere? What do you think about like what the industry is currently experiencing in terms of this like AI narrative?
I think our industry is still super immature. It's been, I guess, 11 years now that I've been kind of initially playing around and then building and then failing and winning and failing and winning, as we all do. And I think a lot of the early things that I saw are still true today. People are quite shallow, typically, and the industry moves quickly towards something that's new and shiny. And so I think the industry moved very quickly towards AI as a new shiny potential narrative for pumpamentals and things like this. And it moved kind of ahead of the curve. And so crypto went towards AI before crypto X AI was even remotely useful. I think what's super cool is that the technology is actually catching up really quickly. And where we are today is that crypto X AI makes tons of sense. I actually love the kind of whole AI agent thing. I think it's one of the coolest innovations ever, full stop. Thinking about user experience and thinking about how do we take this tech stack that's traditionally been a bunch of geeks in the basement, myself included, and bringing it to the masses, trying to make this useful for people in everyday life with the wallets that we have today, forget it. Like, just forget it. We've done so much to try and fix these over the years. I was involved in a bunch of work at Coinbase to try and make this better with smart wallets and things like that. There's some awesome companies building really sophisticated, cool wallets using like MPC technology and email onboarding, like Privy, for example. But even then, like, there's still tons of friction. We have a lot of work to do. The idea of empowering an AI agent, clearly there needs to be guardrails here, and like we're maybe not quite there yet. But the idea of empowering an AI agent to spin up a wallet for you, have some level of control over the economics that you contain within that wallet, and then rather than having to figure out like how do I earn some compound yield by doing this crazy borrow against my asset, use the asset I borrow to re-stake, and then borrow against that, and then do this over here and swap for some other crazy impronounceable token. Like, people are not going to do these things. But if you say, hey, agent, do this for me and earn me the maximum possible yield that you can without crossing these boundaries of risk, and it just goes off and does it on Aave, Compound, Maker, whatever. Like, that is super powerful. One of my friends, Sasha, is building an incredible system in this realm that I'm hyper bullish on, and that's Wayfinder. And I think there's a bunch of different things here. Virtuals and the base ecosystem is super exciting. It's a bunch of cool stuff there. But ultimately, yeah, I am now hyper bullish on crypto X AI. Spin back 6 to 12 months, I think it was just a bunch of vaporware in most cases, with maybe like one or two projects that were genuinely cool, doing something really useful.
Yeah, I find it so crazy if people look at like I think it's AIXBT, like it's the number one crypto yapper by mindshare, and you're just like, how could that be possible? So the maybe my life as a content creator, I'll have to become like a masseuse at some point or some other new career. So finally, we always like to ask our guests for what do you think is an area of the crypto ecosystem that you think is like underinvested in or would be a good startup opportunity. We always have like a lot of builders listening to the podcast that are like just ready to jump in on an idea. What do you think is an interesting sector or interesting idea?
Reputation, by far. I think, let's look at DeFi as an example. DeFi allows anybody to permissionlessly borrow against assets that they existently have to kind of just create leverage, plain and simple. But it's always over collateralized, always, because we can't do an under collateralized loan to like come rockets 1, 2, 3. It's just not going to work. There's no ability for us to recognize, is this user legitimate? Yes or no. And if they are legitimate, do they have the capital required to back a loan of this size? Are they going to pay it off? There's a million different questions. In the fiat world, we solved this a very, very long time ago. We have credit reports, and we have essentially a centralized party creating a reputation for us in our financial lives that other lenders and other businesses can look at to say, yes, let's rent this apartment to Rowan, or yes, let's give Rowan a mortgage for X number of dollars. The on-chain world hasn't figured this bit out yet. And so we're still kind of stuck in DeFi 1.0, which is everything's over collateralized, very complicated from the user experience perspective. I think, excuse me, if you've been living and breathing crypto for even a couple of years, probably it's fine. But if you're net new, it's basically impossible. And so I think, circling back to what I actually believe is the thing that we're underinvesting in, it has to be reputation. We have to come up with a system that enables us to earn reputation, good or bad, over time. And it has to be a reputation that's on chain, that comes with us from app to app, that allows us to unlock extra opportunities if we are a good person. Perhaps it's as simple as proof of humanity type stuff. Like World, for example, are doing a bunch of work here. That's like the cornerstone of this system. We need to get to the point where it's one person, one address. And so once we get to the one person, one address, I guess scanning your iris is one way of doing that. There are many, but that's one. Then you can start building reputation on top of that. World are doing it by passport. And for me, like the evolution there would be, let's start recording the things that this person is doing. Not everything, like we don't want this to be Big Brother, but let's start recording where they do something positive, they do something negative. If an address is at all linked to something that's scammy, there's tons of stuff that we can do. And then we have the technology already to kind of enable people to permission the data. So we can have the majority of the sensitive stuff is private to me only, but I can selectively expose through viewing keys or snarks or whatever certain types of data that's then useful to other people to help make a decision based on what I've done in the past. And so just to bring this back to Sapien for a second, we are not trying to conquer the world and build everything. We're a tiny team. We don't have the capabilities. And candidly, we don't have the expertise in a lot of places. We're in our lane and we're good at what we do. But our system also needs reputation. It will be significantly less complicated than a broad global reputation model, but it's a starting point. And so while we're designing this system, it became quite clear quite quickly that we probably don't want to create it in this centralized system. We probably want to create it on chain, open, and have it as something that others can build on top of to get to the point where we do actually have useful reputation cross system in the ecosystem. And so that's a big part of what we're doing with our reputation system over the next couple months.
Absolutely. Well, some exciting milestones coming up. I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. So finally, where can people learn more about you? Where can they learn more about Sapiens?
Nobody wants to learn more about me. That sounds like a terrible way to spend your time. Please do learn more about Sapien. If you want to monetize your knowledge, if you want to play some, I'm not going to go as far as say playing a game. We're not there yet. Give us a couple months. But if you want to have some fun by monetizing your knowledge, you want to earn some points in our existing points campaign, refer your friends to earn some more points, then they can go to game.sapien.io. The kind of enterprise side of our business is just at sapien.io. Our socials are at PlaySapien, and we would love to invite everybody into the community, ask questions, poke holes. We are in early alpha, moving into beta. The more people that lean in, the more eyeballs that we have, the more questions that we hear, the more likely we are to actually make something good that works, that people can use.
Absolutely. Well, everyone go get involved with Sapien. Go, when it's ready, go try out the game. I'm very excited about the company myself. And Rowan, thank you so much for coming on here. Let's continue building the future of Web3 and AI.